Yeah, I guess we're doing this again. I gave you guys a chair spin in my last video and everybody went nuts. So maybe you'll start seeing it again soon. But anyway, that's for later. Right now, we've got a lightning round video. Hey, thanks for watching this video. So if you're new here, and we have had a lot of new people showing up on the channel lately, the numbers have gone up quite a bit. We're getting dangerously close to 2 million, surprisingly. Maybe the next lightning round video that I do, I will have 2 million subscribers. It's crazy. But anyway, some new people, if you happen to be new, lightning round videos are kind of like my way of giving back to the community. I take questions from Patreon supporters and channel members, and I answer them here live, unscripted. So I ramble a little bit. You'll get used to that. But anyway, I take questions from Patreon supporters and channel members, and I acknowledge people who have showed up recently. So this is like a community give back kind of thing. It's a lot more loosey-goosey, a lot less scripted, but I think they're fun. Some people tend to enjoy them, so I hope you enjoy it too. Anyway, without any further ado, let's get to the questions. We've got Cole Parker who asked, if you take the total number of people killed in all countries trying to get to space and in space, what's more dangerous, attempted space travel or Alaskan king crab fishing, i.e. the deadliest catch? So, there's a video on the way about deep sea diving and construction and oil wells and stuff like that. So I can kind of speak to what a dangerous job looks like. YouTubing is the most dangerous job. I think we can all agree on that. All right, so I can say right away with a lot of certainty that there's a lot more people that have died doing crab fishing than have been in space. Probably than have been in space at all, just because the number of people that have been in space is actually pretty small. But of course, you got to look at proportionality, how many people have been to space versus how many people have died, how many people do king crab fishing versus how many have died. And yes, I want crab now. Seriously, I haven't had crab legs in a long time. That sounds really good. But I think this can be looked up. Let me look it up. Okay, so I got the old Google Chrome pulled up here. Let's this is doable. I found some links, so let's jump into this. So Wikipedia. If you go up to the top of Wikipedia, list of space travelers by nationality, it will say right here, as of February 2024, 644 have reached the altitude of space, according to the FAI definition of the boundary of space. 681 people have reached the altitude of space, according to the USAF definition, and 610 people have reached orbit. So let's go with 681 people. Now, I got a little hack to figure out how many people have died in space that I thought I would just try. So I would just do a little search for died. And the number of times the word died came up in this article is 17 times. So let's go with 17 for now. You know what? I'm going to double check that just to be sure. 15 astronauts and 4 cosmonauts. So out of 691 people who have been to space, 19 have died in accidents relating to getting to space. This is where I pull up the handy percentage calculator. By the way, this is one of those like really easy websites, like really basic websites that I use all the time. It punches way above its belt. This is like such a handy website. So you would say 19 is what percent of 681, and you get 2.79%. So 2.79%, we could just round that up to 2.8. Let's say 2.8% of people who have gone to space have died doing so. So let's look at the crab numbers. So I did a quick search and found on the CDC website, actually, it says the average fishing fatality rate has considerable variation by fishery. Shellfish, primarily crab, had the highest rate among fisheries at 356 per 100,000 per year. Per year. Okay, so to get a percent out of that, we're gonna go back over here and say 356. 356 is what percent of 100K? And it's 0.356%. Okay, so that's not apples and apples yet. That's still apples and oranges because that was a per year number, whereas the space one was in total throughout the whole thing. So to get that, we need to divide 2.8 by 63 years. The first person went up, it was in 61, so it'd be 63 years. So 2.8 divided by 63 is 0.04444444444 infinity. So yeah, crab fishing, the percent chance of dying in any given year is 0.356%, and in space it's 0.044%. Going back to this lovely percentage calculator thing, you can say, what is the percentage increase from 0.044 to 0.356. So commercial fishing is 709% more dangerous than going to space. So yeah, that's not surprising to me. Again, just the sheer numbers of people that do commercial fishing versus go to space is pretty overwhelming. But also, like, I imagine space is a lot more safety oriented. You know, it's a lot more public when something goes wrong. The astronaut's a lot more well known, and also just there's a governmental body that overlooks a lot of details around space travel with human beings on it. So the numbers are smaller and it's much more highly regulated. So yeah, it's safer to go to space. Probably if you were fishing for crabs in space, that would be harder, much harder. Don't recommend. But anyway, there you go. I knew there'd be an actual answer to that. Done. All right, moving on to the next one. Rafe Zero Humor Singer asked, if all our characteristics are there because they offered a competitive advantage in survival, why is depression a thing? How did it help? Interesting. So this kind of question comes up about a lot of things. I see it get asked about homosexuality. There's explanations for that. I feel like a lot of times it comes down to just kind of a diversity of thought, that it's kind of better to have people thinking all different kinds of ways for more flexibility in a society. I mean, 90% of what makes a species survive is its adaptability. And if you have people who think differently amongst that society, that's easier to be more flexible and to adapt. So I haven't searched this yet. I may take a look here in a second, but this just right off the top of my head, I feel like that's probably where the answer is, somewhere in there. That, like, you know, if you had nothing but a whole bunch of optimistic people in a society, in a tribe or whatever, way back when, then, you know, people might not make the best decisions. They might think a little too optimistically when they do things and overshoot and wind up getting into trouble. Whereas if you have a certain percentage of the population that are not as optimistic, that they see things a bit more negatively, they're going to be a bit more cautious, they're going to be a bit more thoughtful before they take actions, that might increase a level of safety among society. But I am talking directly from my anus, so let's do a little search and see what we find out. All right, so a quick search came up with this this article from ScienceDirect.com. Evolutionary theory and the treatment of depression. It is all about the squids and the sea bass. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. The authors of this are Stephen D. Holland, Paul W. Andrews, Daisy R. Singla, Marta M. Mazlej, and Benoit H. Mouzlon. I said it in a French accent because Benoit. So this is a long article. I'll put the link to it down in the description. I'll just go over the highlights though. So right there, highlights. I could highlight the word highlight. It says, depression may be an adaptation that evolved to facilitate solving complex problems. In melancholic depression, energy is directed to the brain to facilitate rumination. And then it goes into the therapy options of it. But right here at the top of the abstract, they call it the analytical rumination hypothesis. Right there. According to the analytical rumination hypothesis, depression is an evolved adaptation, like pain or anxiety, that served in our ancestral past to keep people focused on complex interpersonal problems until they could arrive at a resolution or spontaneous remission. So now I want to search for analytical rumination hypothesis. I'll just copy that. Okay, so this is interesting. It says it accomplishes this by giving episode-related problems priority access to limited processing resources by reducing the desire to engage in distracting activities and by producing psychomotor changes that reduce exposure to distracting stimuli. Because processing resources are limited, the inability to concentrate on other things is a trade-off that must be made to sustain analysis of the triggering problem. So yeah, if I'm reading that right, it's basically saying that depressive symptoms kind of force people to look within and think within, ruminate within. And because we have a limited amount of processing power in our brains, you know, you can have in a, you know, more ancestral society, you have certain people who are out getting food and fighting other tribes, and you got people planting or whatever. And you can also have people who are the more, you know, the more sensitive types that are looking inward and thinking on those kinds of problems, interpersonal, more complex problems in a way that is beneficial to society as a whole. Obviously, there's a lot more to this. I'll put the links to both of these articles down in the description, but I think that's a pretty good answer, and I don't think I was too far off. Turns out my anus is very wise. I'm gonna wish I hadn't said that. All All right, next question. Thomas F. Bolden asked, what are the main reasons that one of a pair of socks goes missing its mate after doing the laundry? Oh, my brother. I don't think there's an answer to that. You know what? I don't know that that's happened to me. Have I ever lost a sock? You know, I keep hearing people talk about this problem about missing socks, and I can't relate. You know what, let's see what Google's AI comes up with for this one. It says socks can go missing for a number of reasons, including getting trapped in the washing machine or dryer, getting lost in transit, or ending up in other places. It goes into more detail. Socks can get trapped in the washing machine's crevices, holes, or tears, and they can... Who has crevices, holes, and tears that big in their washing machine? You need a new washing machine if you have literally a hole in the side that a sock can fly through. The high rotational speeds of modern washing machines can also cause socks to slip through the rubber gasket between the drum and the outer case. Is this a hallucination? Is this really a thing that happens? I mean, I know the little rubber gasket thing that I was talking about, and you can definitely get some crud trapped in there, but an entire sock? Is that really a thing? Comment down below if you have lost a sock in the gasket crevice in your washing machine. Or in the dryer, socks can get trapped in the dryer's lint trap or slip through the holes. In transit, it can get lost while being transported to or from the laundry. This would be my guess. This would honestly be, this is where I think most of the socks would go, is you just drop it along the way and maybe an animal gets it, a dog or a cat or a beaver, if you have beavers in your house. The socks can get lost behind the heater, under the bed, or stuck between pieces of furniture. They can also end up at the bottom of the laundry basket. What's the laundry doing at the bottom of the laundry basket? Oh, thankfully there's also advice here. You can use a laundry bag that apparently it'll get lost at the bottom of. You can tie the socks together, or you could start a sock orphanage. When you find a single sock, you can put it in a separate drawer, bag, or box so you can reunite it with its partner in a future load of laundry. So that was my best attempt, and a multi-billion-dollar AI's best attempt to explain a phenomenon that I apparently have not really had a problem with. I really don't know that I've lost any single socks that I can think of. But maybe that gets you there. All right, the one and only Fishtail asks, events that are news are by definition events that are not common. However, news shows on local TV stations and news networks have more time to fill, so they add things of interest to a majority of their audience, like weather, sports, and celebrity stories. Is this where the political leanings of news outlets come from? Oh boy. Yeah, I was gonna need some more coffee for this question. So this is a subject that I actually feel like I'm pretty qualified to talk about because two different things. One, my college degree is a Bachelor of Arts in Radio, TV, Film. I actually went to college and studied media in college. The second thing is I worked for 12 years at a major metropolitan newspaper. So I have both academic and experiential knowledge on this topic that I could probably talk about all day long. I'll try to make this as succinct as possible. Having said that, I know some of what I'm about to say, some of you guys aren't going to want to hear it. So I'm probably going to get a little bit of blowback from this. So, hey, Answers with Joe mugs available at thatjoescott.com. The t-shirt also available at thatjoescott.com. I'm going to probably need to make up for some lost subscribers here. Okay, here we go. So in the early days of TV, they had what they called the Fairness Doctrine, which basically said that a news organization had to cover both sides of every story, and they could be brought up on charges if they showed too much bias. Now, to be clear, a little bit of bias is unavoidable. We are human beings. We all have biases. And also, these are companies that are making this news, and they're going to have a certain bias toward what's right for their bottom line. Like, perfect example, I can think of several different meetings that I went on, sales calls, when I was working at the newspaper, which was the Dallas Morning News, that we would go and meet with a client, and we'd be pitching them our stuff. And by the way, I worked in the advertising department. I was not a reporter. I was on the advertising side. So I was a copywriter. I would go on a sales call with a client or a potential client. And it turns out we had a lot to overcome because the newspaper had written a story that was somewhat critical of them, and they didn't really want anything to do with the newspaper. So that is just a reality when you're talking about ad-supported news media. That's just across the board gonna be a thing. But going back to the Fairness Doctrine, the reason why they were able to implement and execute the Fairness Doctrine back in the day is because, if you remember, for those who are my age or older, once upon a time, there were only 3 networks. It was ABC, CBS, NBC. That was it. Fox came later in the 80s. I'm not talking about Fox News. I'm talking about Fox, the channel with The Simpsons and everything. That came later. But for the longest time, there were 3 channels. And what you have to understand is that everything was broadcast over the airwaves, right? The frequencies of electromagnetic spectrum that are going out there and your TVs can pick up on. And the United States government actually owned the airwaves. The networks leased the airwaves from the US government. This was true for like decades. So there were 2 things. One, in exchange for getting the airwaves, which they got it for free, but in exchange for that, they had to do news as a public service. So the fact of the matter is there would not be any TV news at all if it wasn't for the fact that the US government owned the airwaves and the networks had to lease them. And by law, as part of that agreement, they had to do a news story or a news program at least once a day. And because they were doing it by the grace of the US government, letting them use these airwaves, there was the Fairness Doctrine that insisted that the news that they produced was as balanced as possible. All right, so that's how things were for the longest time. Flash forward to the 80s, things like satellite TV, cable TV started springing up, and these were not done on those same US-owned airwaves that the networks were getting their leases from. This came straight from satellite dishes, direct to consumer. This came over cable broadband networks, direct to consumer. Now, one thing that I want to make clear, there were pros and cons to that. The pros were that we are a lot more cohesive as a country. We all kind of believed the same things. There weren't these like alternate realities that everybody believed in. The media wasn't so fractured, and that sounds like a good thing. And in that sense, it was. But at the same time, there was only a limited number or a limited amount of information that you got, right? There were limited viewpoints that you received. For example, in the 50s, we had the Red Scare and the McCarthyism and all that. There weren't exactly a lot of really left-leaning, like socialist messages getting through in the media. So for things like that, you had to go with like underground magazines and newsletters and stuff like that. Point is, it was a lot harder for alternative opinions to be voiced back in that day. Now, today we're swimming in alternative opinions and voices. It's just everywhere you look, and we're starting to realize that there can be too much of that, too much of a good thing if you see it as a good thing. But once upon a time, it barely existed at all. Again, more social cohesion sounds good, but there was also a lot of voices that were silenced. So the 1980s came along, now suddenly you got satellite TV, you got cable TV, and that's when Ted Turner came along and created CNN, which was the first 24-hour cable news network. Now, despite whatever political leanings I might have, I'll be the first to say, like, I kind of hate CNN for that, because I really don't think, I don't think that you need a 24-hour news network. You just straight up don't. There aren't that many things happening, because when you have to fill the time, as Fishtail said in his question, when you got to fill the time, it becomes less about like presenting facts objectively and becomes a lot more about opinionated talking heads. And of course, if advertising comes into it and the ratings come into it and they've got to get more people to watch, sensationalism kicks in, and more crazy opinions start showing up to get more people to watch to get that ad revenue. Now, if there is one thing that a 24-hour news channel is good for, is for when events happen when you need like a live play-by-play going on. War is one of those things. So when the first Iraq War broke out, Operation Desert Shield, I believe, CNN blew up at that point. So CNN got really popular after the war, and of course that made a whole lot of other companies say, hey, let's get in on this too. So a whole lot of other news channels started springing up, including Fox News. Now, there's 2 different ways you could look at how Fox News entered the picture. One is that they just wanted to offer a conservative alternative to the regular news cycle, and that's just going to happen in the course of having competition in a media space. You got to differentiate yourself in one way or another. Fox News chose to go conservative as a differentiator. But the other way of looking at it, and I think both of these things are accurate, is that Fox News was headed up by Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes was a former communications director for the Nixon administration. And he argued way back in the day when there were only 3 channels, he argued to create a 4th channel that would be specifically a news channel to disseminate conservative information, one might say propaganda, to the masses. This is all on record. You can find it. There's images of the notes that he had created back in the day. But like, this is what he wanted to do pre-cable. And when cable came along, he had his opportunity, and that's why Fox News went so conservative. And then once Fox News went conservative, and by the way, it became the fastest growing and to this day the most popular news station in the country, other competitors came up and they wanted to differentiate themselves in some way, so they went more left. So you've got your MSNBCs going that way. So you already had this fracturing of news media and their biases and whatnot, and then the internet comes along. That blows it up times 10, and then the social media driven algorithm stuff starts happening, and that blows it up by 1 billion. And that's how you get to where we are today, where a person could literally go his entire life, his or her entire life, and never hear a conflicting opinion from what they already agree with. So, fishtail, to your original question, which was, the prevalence of 24-hour news when there's not that much news to talk about, is that where, the political leanings come from? I think indirectly, yeah. As soon as these 24-hour news services started showing up and there wasn't 24 hours of news to talk about, it became really more of an opinion thing. And anytime you have opinions, you're going to get more bias. That was a very long-winded answer to your question, but I feel like it's pretty comprehensive. So there you go. Now, I do have one more question, but before I get to it, I want to shout out all the Patreons and new members that have come in the last month or so. Let us all be blessed by Zoe. Here we go. On Patreon, we've got Shock, James, Lena, Adam Jensen, Ryan, Eileen M., Brad Frisch, Raken Kaiser, Zachary Spartacus, Angus Prather, Corey Hawks, Danny Aldridge, Jessica Rabe, and Aaron Hladkey. And on the YouTube member side, we've got Dave Mulciber, Kimberly Cooper, Holly Stevens, NROC Production, Andrew King, Helen Cressley, Luke75, MJ, A Successful Journey, Kim Boswell, Kit Adams, and Phil Hudson. Thanks to all of you guys who signed up. You're amazing people. And if you would like to join them and get early access to videos, as well as we got a Discord server that's only available for Patreons and members. We've got live streams exclusively for you guys, even Zoom calls that we hold once a month. And you can just be a part of a really awesome community. You can go to the Patreon link that's down in the description, or just right below, hit the little join button, and you can join the membership thing on YouTube. Thank you. All right, and next up we've got Zealous Retin 102, which I believe is a brand new person. Welcome. This question is, this year I had my appendix out, my dad lost a kidney due to cancer, my sister had her tonsils taken out, and my mom had her full bladder surgery. Damn, that is a lot. I'm so sorry. That was a rough year. You said, I think a good idea for a video might be how many vestigial organs you can lose and still function normally. You know what, Zealous Retin, this is actually, honestly, this has been on in the idea hopper for quite some time. The idea of how many organs can you lose and still stay alive, and or how much do you actually own of your body? Because I know that if you have a body part removed, you can't keep it, like why you would want to keep it other than nostalgia or whatever, I don't know, but like you can't keep it anymore once it's removed. Doctors won't let you keep it. It's now like a biohazard. I was told. But right off the top of my head, I mean, well, you listed right there. You can lose one kidney anyway. You can lose a gallbladder. You can lose appendix, which I had my appendix removed when I was like 9 years old. So I'm with you. Although when I was young and I had my appendix removed, they didn't have the laparoscopics and all that kind of stuff now, where they just poke a hole and go in there and do it. So I've got a big scar across my tummy. But yeah, so tonsils, yeah. Full bladder surgery. I guess you can have your bladder removed, but you'd be incontinent after that, wouldn't you? I can also think of you can have at least one. I think there's 4 parts of the lung. You can have at least 2 of them removed. Like you can lose one lung and function on the other one. None of these are ideal, obviously. I'm sure there's some stories from war of people who have had, lost a bunch of limbs and a bunch of organs and still managed to keep going.
I had the better part of my bladder blown off from Guadalcanal. I have a shell the size of a fist in my head. Pork chop here. Oh, God, I wish I could smell. I had my nostrils fried in Parmesan. But here, help me with this. My eyes are ceramic. A bazooka round, a little big one. My ear canals are very sensitive. They're stainless steel. Took a bullet at Corregidor. Passed straight through. Here, look at this. Huh?
Okay, so turns out it's all on the internet. I found a website that an article that explains it perfectly. So this is the BBC Science Focus website. How many organs in the body could you live without? All right, it says you can have a fairly normal life without one of your lungs, a kidney, your spleen, appendix, gallbladder, adenoids, tonsils, plus some of your lymph nodes, the fibula bones from each leg, and 6 of your ribs. Losing your uterus, ovaries, or breasts, or your testicles and prostate is also quite survivable, although you would need hormone therapy. But it keeps going. If you allow yourself artificial replacements and medication, we can go further and remove your stomach, colon, pancreas, salivary glands, thyroid, bladder, and your other kidney. Still not enough. Surgeons could amputate all of your limbs, remove your eyes, nose, ears, larynx, tongue, lower spine, and rectum. Supported by machines in an intensive care unit, they could also take away your skull, heart, and your remaining lung for at least a short while. They say this adds up to a theoretically survivable loss of around 45% of your total body mass. They also say that if there was a specific trauma that caused all that loss, that your body probably wouldn't survive it because of shock and blood loss. And it also says that surgically removing them one at a time over many months would probably also be fatal due to complications and infections and stuff like that. So let's just say we don't try that. It's funny, like reading all that, it makes me think of like, Darth Vader after he gets all burnt up and they're able to reattach him and stuff. So yeah, you could theoretically be a Darth Vader. It's so funny. The human body is so funny because like I did a video a long time ago that was about it was stories about people who died from relatively minor accidents. I'm talking about like a paper cut that got infected and a person died from it. These are things that happen all the time. But at the same time, you can lose 45% of your body and just keep on clucking. I say clucking because part of that was your tongue, and I don't think you'd be able to say anything, just be like... And honestly, that's higher than I thought it'd be. That's almost half. You can lose almost half your body. I knew it would be surprisingly high, but that was even higher than I thought it would. 45% of your total body mass. I don't think it'd be much fun, but you could live. So yeah, that surprised me. Thank you for that question. So I guess you could technically live without a stomach, but I wouldn't recommend it because then you wouldn't be able to eat the delicious meals from today's sponsor, Factor. Factor's been my go-to meal delivery service for quite some time. I think I've been on there for like 2 years now, and there's a reason for that. Actually, I'll give you 3 reasons. First of all, I'm a busy guy. If I'm not shooting videos for you jabronis, I'm writing videos for you jabronis. If I'm not doing that, I'm researching videos for you jabronis. And if I'm not doing that, I'm trying to figure out exactly what a jabroni is. I don't have time to slice up a bunch of veggies and marinate the meat and cook it up on the stove and then clean half the dishes in my kitchen. It's just not gonna happen. But with Factor, they're super fast. I pull it out of the fridge, throw it in the microwave, 2 minutes later, I'm good to go. That I have time for. Reason number 2, it's delicious. They're fresh, they're never frozen, so you don't get that weird freezer burn texture. In fact, comparing it to frozen dinners from the store isn't even accurate. It's really more like ordering takeout from a restaurant. That's because they're actually crafted by professional chefs. And actually, it gets better because those chefs work with dietitians, so they're actually healthier than what you get at a restaurant. Reason number 3, it's less expensive than ordering out from a restaurant because they work directly with farmers, so there's no middleman yanking up the prices, and the food is fresher. I mean, also with grocery prices through the roof right now, it's less expensive than going to the store. On top of it, taking less time out of your day than going to the store, which time is money, so savings on top of savings.
What a savings.
And you can save even more when you sign up using the code JoeScott50. You'll get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month of boxes. When you're on the site, you can choose from over 35 meals from different meal plans like vegetarian, protein plus, calorie smart, or you can step it up with gourmet options that include items like filet mignon and broccolini, because I know you're a broccoli snob. Anyway, I've been a huge fan of Factor. I think you guys will too. So go to factor75.com, use the code JoeScott50. You'll get 50% off first box, 20% off your next month of boxes. You'll eat better, healthier, and cheaper, and you'll thank me for it later. All right, well, that'll wrap things up for today. You guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all the people who contributed questions. And if you would like to be a person that contributes a question in the future, just go to patreon.com/answerswithjoe and sign up for the solar system level. That's the level that gets you access to being able to ask a question. Please do like and share this video if you found it fun. And if this is your first time here, this isn't the normal kind of thing that I do, but you can check out maybe this video on something. Google might think it's good for you, or you can look down on the sidebar. Just take a look. If you enjoy my videos, I invite you to subscribe. I'm coming out with videos every Monday. But that's it for today. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week. Stay safe, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.